Hello and welcome to the 29th Twin Cities Jewish Film Festival. My name is Riv Shapiro and I'm the festival's producing director. And today I'm joined with our longtime festival volunteer curator, Walter Elias, as well as our director for Children of Peace, Maayan Schwartz, who's joining us from Israel. And Walter, this year, Children of Peace is your pick, your stamp of recommendation for a wonderful film in the festival. Can you tell us about why you chose this film this year?
Well, we have lots of wonderful films this year, but one film stood out for me, Maayan, and that was yours. Uh, I have not been to Neve Shalom, but my son and my wife have been there. Upon my son's bar mitzvah, he contributed his bar mitzvah money to uh, to Neve Shalom. Uh, the uh, the whole idea of your community is resonates with me, and I have been uh, curious about it, about its existence, about its origins, its future for quite a long time. And when this film came along, and I saw how the quality of it, I uh, decided that it had to be my pick. So, in a short answer, that's why.
Thank you very much. I'm very
Thank you,
flattered.
Walter.
And I think it's the right film at the right time, even though when I chose it, this horrible situation had not even occurred yet.
Thank you, Walter. So I think we're all really looking forward to your conversation with Maayan. Take it away.
Well, Mayan, uh, tell me, obvious question, uh, how are you and the community uh, dealing with the current situation? Uh, what uh, the obviously members, Israeli members of the military have been called up, uh, but not the Arab members of the community. How is that all being dealt with?
So let's start with saying that this is very, very sad and frightening moments for people in this area. I guess all people in this region have a very, very, I don't think that, that it's such an overwhelming event that people had never experienced such, like, like I would if we'll talk about the community had experience for the 50 years more or less that it exists, experienced many wars, many violent incidents in the history, but nothing like this had ever occurred. And I guess that people are still trying to understand what's going on. People are still, there's a lot of emotion, a lot of, there is tension, obviously, but there were many meetings and dialogues about the topics, a lot of hard feelings on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very hard time, very, very hard time for everyone. And about
So,
your question about the army, so I would say most of the reserve people who were in the village are already too old to go to the reserves.
okay.
And yeah.
Are there members of the community who have been called up?
Not for my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Maybe people that are in the army at the moment, that they're serving their, they're doing their how do you say, complementary service.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, you grew up in Neve Shalom, correct?
Yeah, I
And
was born and raised.
then when did you leave the community, and what was it that brought you back to the community?
On a formal way, I left after high school. I went to the army and then I left, and I haven't come back for 16 years. Uh, and I would say, in an informal way, I left before that, because the moment I grew up with my friends. Actually, in the movie you can't really see it, but I had, it was me and another 8 Arab boys. All of them were my friends, and when we reached the age of high school, we split it up. They back then we didn't all go to the same school, so they went to an Arab school, and I went to the Jewish one, and we split up. And I felt in a way that this was the beginning of my separation from the village. I felt by myself in a different place, and I grew up apart back then. And I think, first of all, growing up in a small community, there's something exciting about going out, going to the big world. It's something that you, in a way, you want to do it, but you separate from your friends, from the community you grew up in, and then you start to be, I would say, alienated in yourself from like the feelings you get. And I think that what made me eventually understand that I want to do the film, this feeling of being separated, and all those years being, I had this feeling that no matter what I do, okay, I finish high school and then we will return to be friends. But then later on, when it didn't happen, I said, okay, just finish the army and then we'll be friends. And then I finished the army and then it didn't happen. And I think what happened was that the army, which was such a big topic, and you can see it in the film, it made me even feel further, I would say more far away from the village, more separated from the village. I thought, the hard feelings I felt and what people felt made me feel very, I think, alienated is the word, I hope,
Mm-hmm.
from
Yes.
the village. And I had many thoughts and many feelings that during the years, they just became more and more bigger and bigger in my mind. So eventually I decided to make this film just an excuse to go and see if there is, like, those feelings are true. And something I learned from this process is just actually most of my fears and demons were in my mind. And going and talking with the people and having the camera as an excuse to go and talk to them made me understand that I'm so similar to them. And most of my fears were in my mind. It's something that I think you can take this experience to everyday life. And whenever you have something about other people and you just keep it in your mind, and you don't go and confront them, you don't go and talk to them about this issue will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's what eventually made me make the film.
And you now are a resident of the village again?
Yes, as
And
you can see,
when
as you
when
can
did
and
and when did you return? Was it after the film was made?
no, to be honest, it was during the film, like you saw in the film. If you would ask me in the beginning of the process if I would move to Neve Shalom, I would say no way. And what happened was, as I said, that as more as I made the film, the process I've been through was, acknowledging, first of all, understanding that, as I said, my fears were my fears, and acknowledging all the good things I received from this community and the good things this community can benefit me and my family and my kids. And that's why I decided eventually to move. And the last part, which today doesn't look so frightening, but it was very frightening, was during the time of the making of the film. There was the incidents of May 21, if I'm not mistaken, what in Hebrew they call Mivtza Shomer Chomot, where when, there were violence attack all over Israel, and, civilians were attacking each other. And it was horrible, horrible experience for me. And, being born in a community like this, I carry it everywhere with me. And to see how people that used to live in coexistence just fight each other, just reflects in the most clearest way that the only place in Israel back then that didn't have any violent attack between Israelis and Palestinians, citizens of Israel, neighbors, were in Neve Shalom, Waqt Salam. It's the only place that those violence attacks can happen. And I think this is the clearest way to understand that even though Neve Shalom have many obstacles and many issues it needs to solve, at the end of the day, people won't go and attack their neighbors. And I think it sounds like something very small, but it's huge. Even in those days where everything is crazy, everything is chaotic, and nothing is clear, this thing is clear for me. I know that none of my neighbor will ever come and attack me, which is a big thing in these days. Sadly, I would say.
And so, to what do you ascribe that? Is it the community relationship, the individual relationships that have built up over the years, the interdependence of people? What is the lesson there?
I'm sure that all the things you mentioned have an influence on it. And I'm not an expert, maybe a socialist will have, the thing about Neve Shalom, everybody has an answer and everybody has an opinion. So
yeah.
My opinion is that the people who come to Neve Shalom, eventually, people would say they live in a bubble. They're not living in a society like the rest of the region. It's a bubble. It's not a normal. But actually, it's the other way around, because people in this region, they choose to live among their own people, which is the bubble. It's like ignoring the fact that there is another people here. And whenever you go with your own people who talk like you, look like you, speak like you, then you don't have any conflicts. But the moment you live with the conflict, which is not comfortable at all, people think, oh, Neve Shalom, it's so peaceful and everybody hippie and, Woodstock and peace and love. Actually, they live with the conflict or every day. So dealing with the conflict and talking about it and, dealing with those complicated, complex issues all the time is hard, and maybe it's not resolvable. Maybe it's not idyllic, but at the end of the day, I think this is what prevents violence, because whenever you deal with it all the time, then you don't need to come and kill your neighbor, because you know what his opinion, maybe he can make you mad, maybe whatever, but he's your neighbor and you talk to him and you talked about it all the time, and nothing has changed now. The only thing that had changed is that the outer world is going crazy again.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very well said, Maayan. I was wondering, uh, given the relative success of the village, uh, how come it has not been replicated in other parts of Israel, and why are there not a few dozen Neve Shaloms around?
To be honest, it's something that is, your question is very important, and I didn't put a lot of, I should have put more effort to clear this issue in my film. Some people can see this fact as a failure, of Neve Shalom, to see how come Neve Shalom never replicated itself, but actually never had the chance to, because the only reason Neve Shalom Wacht Salam exists is because it is on it's on a private land inside inside Israel, on Latrun Monastery's land, and Israel had never gave an inch to Neve Shalom to expand itself. So it's a very political reason. There is no interest. Unfortunately, there is no interest in Israel to, how do you say, to, well, the word just slipped to my mind, to approve this amount of this form of living, unfortunately. But something I think the community has understood, at least this is my belief, is that Neve Shalom, as a small community, the strong the strong point of Neve Shalom is the fact, is not trying to build this model that need to be replicated, because it's not an ideal model. It's a story. Okay, as a person who thinks with stories and tells stories, people see the world in stories, and Neve Shalom is a story about a place that enemies decided to live together and to prove that they can do it without killing each other, and growing their kids together and building a community together. And, with all the difficulties, they managed to do it. And that's the story I wanted to tell. That's the story I wanted the world to see. That in all the stories you hear about the conflict and you hear about the region, you will have another story to help you, understand this area in another point of view. Okay, and this is, in my belief, the greatest power of Neve Shalom, the story of it. Okay, and it took me I will say that it took me many years to understand that I want to make this film, because I had some anger about the place. I had all kind of criticism about the place, and I felt I don't want to do a film that will, destroy this story or to destroy this myth about Neve Shalom.
Yeah.
But the more I grew up, I understood that it's not a myth. It's a real thing. It's a place which is not perfect, like all the rest of the thing in the world, but it still exists, and the kids of the people who grew up here want to still grow their kids here. And as I said, people are trying, people are here, people are, again, not killing each other, which sounds so absurd, but still is a big thing in this area, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Maayan. This is such a valuable conversation for our community when a lot of the public discourse has been unable to be with this kind of painful multiplicity. So really appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective, and for us to be able to bring our community together and be in this kind of reflection and have access to a different story, like you mentioned. Really grateful for you sharing a different story.
And I think I would add that in this period of life we have, people need to see the complexities. You know, I see how people take the first information they get and they form an opinion straight away.
Yeah.
Without understanding there's so many layers to everything. There's so many layers. And each side become more and more apathic to the other people's suffering. And it's so dangerous on both sides. And it is so important to remember that, because this is when people become inhuman. It's so important on both sides. I see it on both sides. Each side is so sure in his rightness, and people become so hardened, you say, you know, their heart become hard and they don't
Yes.
care about the other side. And it's so important. I see what is going on in the States, where people are so divided. They're saying, yeah, I'm right, and yeah, you're right. And then there's such a, you know, the conversation is so shallow. You can condemn and at the same time feel sorry for the other side. It doesn't make you any way less right. And it's something that is so important to understand. That's, for me, it was important to say.
Thank you. And I'll let our audience into that we hope to bring you in February, when you'll be coming to the States, inshallah, Bezrat Hashem. God willing.
I was supposed to be now in the States.
We hope that you'll be able to come and tour with your film in February, and we would love to speak more with you.
Love to see you in person, Maayan.
Yes.
Inshallah. Me too. Me too.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful festival.
Thank you. Thank you to our audience for joining and engaging in this meaningful way to come together as a community and think about things that are really difficult in this time. So we hope that you'll enjoy the rest of the festival and stay and connect with each other. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Bye.